All right, I believe we are live. I'm just going to go ahead and give it a refresh and make sure I can see us here on Facebook. Wonderful, we are live. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Boys Town Tech Talks. My name is Gabby, and we are live here today for our second Tech Talk with Dr. Steve Arcidiacono from the Boys Town Center for Behavioral Health. We're going to be discussing all about video games today because I'm sure a lot of you parents are probably scoping out those Black Friday deals and thinking of different ideas for Christmas gifts, and video games might be on your list. So while you're thinking about that, we're just going to talk about a few safety practices and both the good things and bad things that can come with video gaming for kids of all ages. If you're watching live and you have a question for Dr. Steve, you can leave it in the comment section of this video. And if you're not watching live, but maybe you have a follow-up, of course, we'll be linking resources from Boys Town Parenting in the comments as well. And please make sure you like this video and share it with another parent that may find it helpful. Dr. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. I've been doing it since I got into the field. When people are like, hey, you need to give a presentation on your topic of choice, I was always talking about research on video games and its impact on kids. And back then, it didn't have quite the impact that it's having now. So I even got feedback on occasion like, hey, you might want something that's a little bit more relevant to like clinical concerns. And now, every family that I'm talking to has brought up screens and video games. And so I'm really excited to share what information I have and try to be helpful for people.
Yes, so we very much appreciate it. Before we begin, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role at our South Florida Behavioral Health Clinic.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Steve Arcidiacono, and I usually just go by Dr. Steve because it's easier than saying that last name. And I'm the director of our South Florida Behavioral Health Clinic. So we do outpatient behavioral health services, which would be like therapy, some testing, things like that. So once a week, every other week, we do individual and family therapy. We do parent-oriented interventions like parent training, things like that. And this topic is a very common one that we encounter. So we make sure that we are educated on how to approach and help families with how to manage screen time and especially video games.
Yes. And as I said in the beginning, you might think when you're clicking on this live chat to watch it, oh, video games, we're just going to talk about all the bad things. Well, of course, there's bad things with everything, right? But tell us a little bit, what are some good things that come out of video games for kids?
Sure. So like you said, I think video games and psychology, like people are going to immediately jump to the bad stuff. There are good things. There's research that cognitive skills, like kids who play video games tend to have improvements in certain cognitive skills, like problem solving, working memory, things like that. You got to think about what the games are doing, what they're doing in the games. And a lot of it is strategic, solving puzzles. It depends on what kind of games they're playing. Some connections with other people, like communication skills. And a lot of games nowadays are collaborative. So they're playing as a team and needing to figure out who's going where and what and those sorts of things. So I think there are benefits in that way. And then socially, even beyond just the strategy of working and communicating with each other, it's become, from back when I was young, a socially isolating interaction, like you're in your mom's basement playing on the console, to a really connected experience. There are very few games that don't have some sort of social element included in them that are very popular for kids. And in fact, if you aren't playing video games as a like adolescent boy, you're in the vast minority of the group, and it might even be harder to connect with people socially. So I would say those two things: cognitive skills and social connections.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And you mentioned screen time here at the beginning of our chat, which of course is something that we're always worried about for our kids. How can families tell the difference between healthy gaming habits and more problematic use?
Sure. So I tend to include video games under that umbrella of just screen time management. And in particular, I think video games are a type of interaction with a screen that is very, very, very powerful. So, sitting passively and watching a movie is a fun experience, but this is just in the history of time. It's hard to imagine something as engaging as these exciting games with all sorts of new, interesting things happening, and you're talking with people, and it's bright colors. It's very, dopamine releasing. So it can be easy to fall into problematic habits with them that go beyond some of the other screens that are available. And what I usually talk about is making sure that the priorities are met. And I'll probably mention that a lot during this conversation. People get really caught up in time, like, oh, they're spending how many hours a day? And to me, it's not really about the time. It's about, are they meeting the priorities? And priorities being things like sleep, things like health, getting some physical activity during the day, eating, believe it or not, eating with some mindfulness, like paying attention to what you're eating, not just scarfing whatever is available, or neglecting your eating because you're too engaged in a game. Hygiene, making sure that you're showering and brushing your teeth, and maybe taking some time away to spend some time with friends in real life, or some family dinner time, those kinds of things. So if those things are being met, then the gaming could be hours and it wouldn't be problematic necessarily. But if those things aren't being met and they're starting to prioritize the video game time over those other things, like sneaking out in the middle of the night to play for several hours, that's a sign that it's crossed the line from something that's just a fun, potentially positive outlet to something that is problematic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that reminds me, I was scrolling today on social, and I read this story from a mom who had 2 teenage children. She didn't designate son or daughter, but she was saying, I put so much effort in to take my kids out on the weekend to do something fun and try and connect as a family. And the whole time they are just giving me an attitude. They're grumbling. They don't want to go. And then it's funny to me because, a couple months later, they'll bring it up and say, Mom, that was fun. We should go back and do it again. Mm-hmm. And I was reading through the comments on that post of just, curiosity of what people were saying. And someone commented and said, take away all the devices, no more screen time. They're grumbling because they just want to be at home doing the video games and scrolling through TikTok. What would you say about that?
Could be.
Yeah, could be.
It's hard to compete.
Right.
That's what I'm saying is taking your family to the beach is fun. Mm-hmm. You can play, games and boogie board and make a sandcastle and those kinds of things. But you could have fun there. But compared to logging into, I'm making up one of the more popular games right now, Steal a Brain Rot with your friends, and there's this assembly line and you don't know what's coming down. It could be this new awesome brain rot thing that's giving you all the cool points, and you're stealing them from your friends, and you're yelling, and it's new, it's got bright colors and immediately reinforcing, and the sun's not hot, and you know what I mean? Like, it's just got this very, very engaging experience. Sometimes I talk about like the history of games and how they were developed, and that helps you get some insight there. Think about how arcades were. So when people were publicly accessing video games for the first time, was very often in an arcade. And in those cases, the game creators would make their game, and then you would have to, put coins in the slot to be able to play it. And then if you, lost or died or something, you would have to put in more coins to continue. So if the game was too easy or too boring, that like if they just, played it and finished the game and yay, I won on one coin, that didn't get them enough money. And if it was too difficult and they lost right away, they would go, I'm not going to play this. So the game designers had to find ways to get the person to continue to play. That was like the goal. So they needed to make it fun and engaging and just challenging enough to keep them going. And each new level gave new abilities or had new exciting things to defeat, and you never knew what was coming. And so in the origin of games, even from the 80s, that was sort of the goal, was how do I get people to continue to engage in this thing? And then came home consoles where you could play on your own, and they wanted to keep people engaged and be willing to spend $50 or whatever at that time to be able to play that thing. And now it's, how do I get people, how do I compete with the other games? There's a million jillion ones out there that they could play. So how do I get everyone on mine? And so just the people creating these things are incentivized to make them in a way that is the most engaging and interesting thing that they can possibly do to get people to continue to play them. So when you compare that to a peaceful but peaceful, fun time at the beach. It's just not a fair fight. So yes, I would probably be worried a little bit about the limits and maybe set them up in a different way where there is better balance of activities, so that they have other things that they're engaged in, and they're not as bought into just playing the game.
And how do we kind of set those limits without it being a daily power struggle?
It's a great question. The short answer is you need to create a media plan. So a media plan is something that the whole family follows. You take some time to draw it up. You discuss it with the kids. Depending on their age, you should include them in the decision making on some of these things. So talk to them, engage with the content, like learn what games they're playing and why. For example, that thing where you said they were going to the beach, there's some games where they release things at certain times. So, and it's only then. So it'll be like Saturday at noon, there's this thing to do. And then, they're thinking about it all week. And then parents wake up and they go, you know what? We're going to get away from these screens. We're going to the beach. And the kid's like, what? And they're freaking out. And it looks to the parent like you're addicted, but it's more like in that specific game, there was something they were really looking forward to. You just didn't know that. So engage with them, help understand why they want these certain things. What do they get out of it? Is it connecting with other people? And then how do we make sure that we meet those priorities that I was referencing earlier, and have you build a healthier relationship with these things? So, for example, a simple one to start with would be something like homework. So when they come home from school, I would not give them free reign and free access to the games. And by the way, sometimes that in itself is already part of the media plan of something like, hey, this is going to change. It was in your room and you had free access whenever you wanted to. Now we're going to keep it and we're going to give it to you when you earn it. And that in itself is big. And it could be you need to come home and meet a few criteria, right? You need to, and those priorities are the things that you're referencing. You need to finish your homework. You need to eat something, and you need to spend 20 minutes outside doing something. And as soon as you check those boxes and you come in and you show me your homework and I know you're done, you've met those priorities, you can play until dinner. And then that's going to take the priority. Why? Because you got to eat. That's a priority, right? So do you see how I'm working that in there? It's developing a plan and teaching the kid that I'm not just being mean. I'm trying to make sure that you build a healthy relationship with these games so that it doesn't interfere with other important things in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so much of what we talk about here at Boys Town Parenting is kids like predictability. They like knowing what is going to come next. So when we make this family media plan, they know everything is clearly outlined. So they're never shocked of, oh my, well, I haven't finished my homework. Why can't I game now? It's clearly outlined. So
believe it or not, Gabby, sometimes you make that plan. So I have it with my own kids a little bit. Okay. And one of the things that we set up was the floor needs to be clear, is the way that I phrased it, meaning you don't have toys on the floor, you don't have clothes on the floor, whatever. And my 5-year-old at one point said, it was TV in this case, but it could be games, it could be any screen really. So can I watch TV? And my answer was yes, as soon as the floor is clear. And she said, but I don't want to clean up the floor. And I said, I get it. And she said, so can I watch TV? And I said, yes, as soon as you clean up the floor, as soon as, right? Like it's a redundant conversation. And it's just already been established. And this helps with that transition off the device, because you're not taking the device away from them. You're not taking them away from that powerfully reinforcing thing with their friends to try to get them to do something difficult. They need to do the difficult thing in order to get the reinforcing thing with their friends. And then as far as transitioning off of it, you can have that be part of the expectation is, hey, in order to continue to play, you need to transition off of the game. When I tell me what makes that hard. And again, this is part of the planning. And each game is different. You need to understand what's going on in them. Some of them you can just turn off right away and it's no problem. Some of them, the parent might think, well, I only asked you to step away for 2 minutes. Well, steal a brain rot in Roblox. If you step away for 2 minutes, people are going to come steal your stuff that you've been, that's the whole point of the game is you don't want them to steal your stuff. So what I'm saying is that if you understand why, then you can give them directions that make a lot more sense for them to transition off easily. If it's Fortnite, you could look in and say, hey, how many people are left? 100 people jump in and it's survival of the fittest. So if you say how many people are left and they go, there's only 3 left, you go, okay, as soon as this round is over, let's go. Maybe cheer them on for the last 3 minutes of the game, right? It's okay. But that's an action to be taken. Or Minecraft, it could be run to your bed, because your bed is like your safe place. It's like your save zone. Okay, so run to your bed is the direction you can give that helps them transition off the game easier. It would be similar to saying after this episode, you need to turn it off, instead of trying to get them to turn it off. If you just say in 5 minutes, again, thinking of the episode metaphor, that could still be like the most exciting part of that episode. And you're over there saying, I gave you a warning. If you can understand the game and you come up with a fair way to do it, you can develop a plan collaboratively that works for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like what you said too about even cheering them on. Just how can parents kind of get involved in, they might say, oh, my son or daughter, they love Fortnite. I don't really know what that game is, but they love it. Is that is that an opportunity where parents can really grow their relationship with their children if they're kind of showing interest and learning about it?
100%. And oftentimes that is one of the more difficult and first steps that I'll recommend is you need to understand what they're doing. Because I have an initial interview with families when they come in for help, and they'll tell me he's addicted to these games. And I'll ask a question like, well, what are they playing? And the parent says something like, I don't know, Robux or something. And I go, ooh, we have a problem here, because you don't even know what they're playing. And by the way, the answer of Roblox isn't even really an answer, because Roblox isn't even a game. It's like a platform for several games within Roblox. So I have to ask further, well, which games within Roblox? And then the parent's looking at me like, I don't know. So if you don't know what they're doing, that's a problem in itself. And then secondly, there's so much of an opportunity to engage and connect with your child. Those questions that parents ask when they pick them up from school of how was school? And did you do this? And did you do this? And then parents routinely tell me their kids shrugging and saying, I don't know, fine, same, normal. Okay, well, think about what they're interested in. Do they want to talk about school right after school? Probably not. If you want to get your kid to talk to you, ask them, what thing they're going to do when they get home. Or, hey, there's this new event. What's the latest season in Fortnite? Like, what is the theme? And what's the coolest skin, you think? And the kid's going to start talking to you completely, but you have to know what even questions to ask. If your kid's playing Fortnite and you don't know what I mean by what season is it and what skins are there, there's a problem. And so if you can sit and engage with them, you can speak their language, you can connect with them. They'll be excited to tell you things that are happening. Play the games. And parents will say, well, it's not really my thing. And my answer sometimes is, if it was something else, I bet you would still engage with it. If it was a sport, if they were playing football and football wasn't really your thing, would you say, oh, I don't know, they're playing that foosball thing? No, probably not. You would probably go to their games and cheer them on and start to learn more about it, right? Same thing. Or I have 2 girls, and I don't know about My Little Pony, but I started to learn the characters, and I started to watch Gabby's Dollhouse and know the songs. And is that particularly my thing? No. But you engage with it because your child is into it and because it's important. My kids don't play Roblox, but I know about Roblox, not just because of my work. I want to know what the kids are talking about. I want to be able to engage with them and connect with them. I'll say one more thing about that too. I know I'm giving a long answer.
No.
One more thing is that there are fun ones that parents might actually enjoy if they give it a try. So we have a Nintendo Switch at home, and that one tends to be a little bit more family friendly. You could think of the classic Mario type games. There's a game like Mario Party where it's almost like a board game, but on the screen. There's Mario Kart, like friendly competitive games. There are rhythm games like Just Dance, where you're trying to like dance and match the thing that they're doing on the screen. So there are a ton of games that aren't sitting around shooting each other that you could play with your kids and have like family fun together. And if you offer that, not, let's go read some books at the library, the kid might jump to it quicker. They might do that thing that you're wanting them to do, which is be excited to engage with the family.
Mhm. Yes, perfect. Well said. Well said. So I'm thinking, when parents are watching this live, a big concern with video gaming is going to be the digital communication throughout. So thinking of, some of the games, they might have a chat function, and what should parents know about that, especially when they're concerned of, okay, my child might be chatting with their friends from school, but what if a stranger joins
Mhm.
or a man from another state joins and I'm worried about my kid communicating with them?
Yep. I would say that is a common concern that I hear, and one that I have even for my own kids, because eventually they will be playing these, I'm sure. And a couple of thoughts. So one is you might know the game, but you need to pay attention to those things you just described, like in-game chat functions. And there's typically limits that parents can set to restrict who they can connect with and communicate with. But you need to take some time and do some research and figure out how to set those limits. It's part of your responsibility as a parent. And if you just sort of say, I don't know, if you outright ban, that's not always the best, because you're not really giving them an opportunity to learn. And if you just free for all, that's like sending your kid to a theme park alone and just being like, yeah, I'm sure they'll be all right. Right. So I wouldn't do either of those extremes. Instead, a teaching process is better. Set the limits, have them earn more trust, maybe some starting out without audio chat and just the typing chat that you're able to access and read if you do the right parental controls, for example. And then maybe they can grow to earn chat with friends as like the next step, right? Friends only. And maybe have the audio available, like not on headphones, like have it out loud so that you could hear if you walk by what people are saying and doing. And that's, I think, a big principle I've touched on, but maybe haven't made completely clear, is that to me, it's not about yes or no. It's about teaching, because as they get older, they will have more and more access to these things. And kids are smart and they figure out how to do that on their own. And if you just straight up ban it, they figure out ways, and then they don't have the skills to handle those when they do get access. So I would rather start more restrictive, and then as they grow trust and demonstrate to you that they're trustworthy, then you can get less and less restrictive over time.
Yeah, especially when you think about outright banning it. We don't recommend that for a lot of the different topics we talk about, because I'm sure, working in the clinic, they will find a way to game, whether it's at a
They're
friend's
smart.
house, yeah, at school,
Oh,
they can do these private browsers. There's so many
uh-huh.
avenues, and you don't want to teach your kids how to sneak around you. So I
Yeah,
love
they
that.
get better at being sneaky. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I
yeah,
think it can still be good to set those limits just to kind of add barriers so it's not so easy.
yeah.
But really, the whole purpose should be flipped upside down. Instead of here's your device, don't mess it up, and if you do, I'll take it away. It's more like, I'm going to give you this device in a very small, structured way. And if you demonstrate to me that you can use it the right way, then I'll let you use it more. Think about it like a car, right? Like, teaching somebody to drive a car. You wouldn't just give them the keys and say, don't break the rules and don't crash, or you're getting your license taken away. You have a process of teaching them by like the book, which would be sort of like conversations. And then they do a little driver's practice, in the parking lot or something like that. And that might be playing the game with the headphones off with you right there. And then you start to grow towards independence. It's the same principle. It's teaching how to handle this instead of just saying good or bad, you can, you can't.
Yeah, definitely. For those of you watching live, you might be seeing that we are linking several resources from Boys Town Parenting in the comment section related to gaming. So just wanted to call those out and encourage you to check those out after this video. And of course, we will leave all the information for our South Florida Behavioral Health Clinic in the comments too. Okay, so Dr. Steve, gaming for some kids could be a coping mechanism for stress or loneliness. How can parents distinguish between healthy stress relief and emotional avoidance through gaming?
So I like the word that you use of emotional avoidance, and I think that's part of my answer. So if they are meeting all those priorities, they're their effort in school is good. They're connecting with friends. They have hobbies outside of gaming, and they like to come home and blow off steam and play the games a bit, and that helps them. That seems relatively healthy to me. If they're using it as their primary coping mechanism to avoid those responsibilities, that to me is a bigger concern. If they are nervous around people, so they retreat to their games to help tolerate that distress, that's problematic. It would be better to teach them to work through their distress and cope with it without needing the game there, and use the game as their coping skill. It would be better for them to learn how to develop their own strategies to cope with difficult situations. And then the game becomes one option of something they can do while still meeting all the other criteria, not a go-to way of dealing with stress. The loneliness part too is important. I think that one of the benefits of online gaming is the social connections. However, it's not as ideal to have that be exclusively your social connections. Ideally, there are some other activities built in, some other opportunities to connect with people. The gaming people would say IRL, in real life. So you have in real life activities that you could do, like joining a sport or a club, or just even hanging out. Even hanging out with a friend in real life and playing games together is an example of that. So you're going to want to have balance, is my answer, and you're going to want to have the capability to work through distress without relying on the games. There's some kids I meet where that is their primary way, and they're mostly using it to avoid some of the challenges that they're dealing with. And instead, I would rather have them work through those challenges.
Yeah, for sure. So some kids, like I mentioned at the beginning, might be asking for gaming consoles for Christmas or looking for one for Black Friday. So what's your advice for younger kids who they don't have any gaming devices at home and they're wanting one? How can parents introduce those?
Mm-hmm. So I am going through this personally. So I'm
Well, you
going through
mentioned
it
the
with
split
everybody.
for your
Yeah.
kids. Yeah.
So one of the things that I have tried to get across to my own kids, and I've talked about with people in the clinic, is discerning what's yours, and whether access to it is like a right versus a privilege that's supposed to be earned, and trying to instill that notion from a very early age will help you so much as they progress through adolescence, because they're going to get more and more access to this stuff. So those principles that you're teaching at a very young age will help make your life easier when you're older. My kids, for example, they are able to play the video games, but they even if they have the device, even if it is a Switch, it's a Switch 2 that they got, I made it clear to them that they don't just turn it on and play whenever. There's sort of a process to be able to earn it. And even if you're giving them a Christmas gift of a console or a new video game, it should be clear to them that there's some sort of expectation that needs to be met in order to gain access to it. Even if in theory the console is theirs, the access to that game has a bit of a gatekeeper in the way, which is the parent, in order to allow them the access. Parents could also use resources online. Common Sense Media is a very good one, where you could look up specific games and look beyond just like an age rating and look into some of the content that's involved in those games to determine whether or not that's appropriate for your child. Each family is different on what they consider to be okay and not okay. So look into those websites, look at some of the possibilities that they might run into. That thing you were describing before about like online chats, I would say would be a red flag for a very young person. I would not recommend that. Games like Mario games and Pokemon and some of those are typically more closed, like they're not an online world that they're jumping into. So I would say that those might be better options of games to start with. Games that are friendly, more peaceful, less aggressive, more collaborative. You could play co-op games, which is where you're playing together to solve a problem. I would say keep an eye out for those as better options for younger kiddos.
Perfect. And our last question here is, if a parent feels that things have gone out of control with their child's gaming, maybe they're gaming excessively or reacting with anger when maybe we bring up that family media plan and the guidelines with that. What are the first steps they should take to address it?
I think on the parent end, the first thing would be trying to work on yourself a little bit and your frustrations and recognize that this is a child. This is somebody who is encountering the world and learning how to work through it. And we've given them access to one of the most, if not the most powerfully reinforcing things in the existence of humans. And so, of course, they're having some challenges, transitioning off of that to homework or some chores or something else like that. So first, I would say as a parent, take a step back, try to use some empathy and understand what the child is doing and why, and that they're learning, and try to use that as your mindset of, this child is learning something, and it's my job to teach them how to manage that, and try to just have a discussion and listen, try to get an understanding of why they're doing it, what are they getting out of it, and then there might be some natural solutions that develop from that. If they say, I'm doing it because it's the only way that I can connect with my friends, okay, let's come up with some alternative ways for you to connect with friends. Or they say, I'm doing it because it's my only hobby. That's the only thing that I care about. Okay, let's come up with some other hobbies. Let's experiment with a few. And you don't need to stick with them. Let's just try some, right? So you could approach it in a way that is authoritarian and shut it down and take it away, but that's only a temporary solution. What's more important is slowing down, understanding where they're coming from, and then teaching to that so that they develop healthier habits, and those will be longer lasting solutions. They're more difficult. It's more difficult to do it that way, believe it or not, but it will create longer lasting solutions.
Yes, definitely. And of course, we can always come to you at the behavioral health clinic if we need more
Yeah,
help.
I should have said that too. if you feel like, that's what I would say too, is that if you feel like you've tried everything, if you feel like you're putting these things in place, or you just need more, I mean, we just talked for half an hour about this, but I mean, there are college courses about this type of topic. So if you feel like you need assistance in that process, if you feel like it's gone too far, see some of those things that we talked about being impaired, sleep, grades, those sorts of things. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. That's absolutely in the wheelhouse of things that we work with.
Yes, wonderful. And for those of you watching, if you haven't seen our first Boys Town TikTok, we did one. It sounded like I said TikTok. Boys Town Tech Talk. We did one on AI. So I will link that in the comments for you to watch, because that's one where, yeah, we only talked for 30 minutes, but we could go so many ways with it. And we're going to keep up with these Boys Town Tech Talks in 2026. So if there is a topic that you would like Dr. Steve to speak on, please go ahead and comment below, send it to our page, and we'll definitely be growing this series. So Dr. Steve, thank you for your time today.
Of course, I'm excited to continue the tech talks.
Yes, I know. You got to say that 5 times fast,
Tech
I think.
talks. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Like I said, make sure to like this video and share it with a parent who might find it helpful. And we'll see you next time.